Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Over the course of the year, as I have gotten way more into books than I have ever been, I have naturally bought a lot of books that I haven't read. Part of that is because I have so frantically been reading things that I've been borrowing from the library, because I always borrow like 6 things at a time and then have 2 weeks to read them, and I'm panicking because there's no way that I can do that. Obviously, this video is very different to my 5-star predictions because the books in that video I knew a lot more about, I'd heard a lot more about in terms of recommendations from other people, whereas these ones are ones that I've either heard a lot about and I'm still kind of unsure on where I'm going to sit on them, or I have heard absolutely nothing about them, so I don't know what to expect. I have sorted these books into 4 categories and I've got them in front of me, so I'm trying to like remember what the categories are. Historical fiction / historical element. The second one is sort of like contemporary and then romance. The third one is law / crime, and then the fourth one is just generic sort of fantasy in every way. So I'm going to start with my first category, which is historical fiction / historical element, and my first book in that category is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Some might ask why this isn't in my expected 5-star reviews book, given the hype around it, given how much people have loved it, given how much people love Taylor Jenkins Reid. And that is just because I've never read anything like it before. I picked it up thinking I'd love it and then sort of kind of put it down and forgot about it. My very brief knowledge of this book is that it follows a family in the lead up, the occasion, and the sort of aftermath of a party. They are a very famous family. I believe by the end of the night or the following morning, the mansion of the family is up in flames. So there's definitely a sort of mystery sort of around that as well. So I am excited to read it, but I don't know what I'm going to expect. The second and last book in my sort of historical category is The Passenger by Ulrich Alexander Boschwitz. If you know anything about me, you know that I am an absolute World War II buff. Obviously heartbreaking, incredibly heartbreaking, but I find it a very fascinating time in history to sort of examine and understand more about. This particular book follows a Jewish man. It's just the complete heartbreaking and fascinating story of the flight and drive for survival of a Jewish man in Nazi-occupied Germany. I think he's sort of recording his escape from the Nazis, so again, I reckon I'm going to love this, but I reckon it's going to break my heart as well. The next category, which has 2 books in it, and actually I think all of these categories have 2 books except for my fantasy one, which has 3. But anyway, the next category, which has 2 books in it, is my general fiction / romance category, and the first book in this category is Eleanor Ophelia is Completely Fine by Gail, Honeyman. I won't lie, part of what attracted me to this book when Ben bought it for me was just, I think the title is quite funny. It's like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, you know, when you're panicking about something going on in your life and you're like, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine. So I thought it was somewhat funny, but then again, I don't know anything about this book, so maybe that's a horrible thing to say. Knowing very little about this book, I believe it's about a woman named Eleanor who is completely kind of content with her life. She does what she needs to do, she gets dressed, she goes to work, she, you know, has her vodka in the evening, she gets through her days, and she just thinks everything is completely fine until maybe one day when she kind of realizes that it's not and that she's missing everything. I think this will be a really fascinating read, but again, I've never read anything like this. In the past, when I've read sort of situation-based stories rather than anything with like a particular climax and a, you know, battle to fight towards and everything like that, I found them quite slow-moving, and I think this is going to be one that's really like introspective. The next book in my books I need to read in 2022 is The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. I loved The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test, and then The Heart Principle came out and I was super excited to pick it up. I was going to read it pretty much immediately until I started watching videos of people reviewing it. A lot of people have been saying it's their most disappointing read for 2021. I believe the book focuses around a famous violinist by the name of Anna who finds out that her boyfriend, her long-term boyfriend, decides he wants an open relationship, and she's absolutely heartbroken by this. She doesn't want that. She doesn't see that being the way her life is panning out. So she kind of embarks on a string of one-night stands at which point she meets Quan and they have a bit of a failed one night stand, and then a second, and then a third. After a number of tragic events strike both of their families, they kind of come together and heal, I guess, together. I'm looking forward to reading it, don't get me wrong, but I don't know what to expect from it, and I honestly don't know if I'm gonna love it. The next category is my crime/law category. The first book in this category is Fake Law by the Secret Barrister. This is one, I think there's quite a lot of books in this list actually that Ben got me. Because I keep getting gifted books by different people. So I am determined to read more of the books that people have gotten me in 2022, and obviously this is one of them. Fake law, I believe, is sort of an examination of really, really strange laws. It isolates a number of different laws and comments on them and how they can find loopholes and cases where loopholes have been found in these laws, and I think that'll be really, really fascinating. It's written by a barrister who is choosing to remain anonymous. I think it's going to be a really, really fascinating examination of the sort of the lies that you can tell in the justice system and the way you can kind of work the system to make something work in your favor for both good and bad. The last book in my crime/law category is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I believe this is a murder mystery. Two secret newcomers come to town, this small town called Lockwood, and a law professor, I believe, has assigned some law students to the case to kind of figure out what happened. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of reading the blurb as I go through because I don't know what this book is about. I believe someone's been already sent to prison for the murder that took place, but everybody thinks he's innocent, so it'll be interesting to sort of watch that play out as they sort of do this appeal process. I don't think I've ever read anything from the sort of law perspective. Obviously, I read Thursday Murder Club recently, which was from the police perspective, or sort of not police, it was the older people solving the crime perspective, but I've never read anything from the sort of legal side of things, so it'll be interesting. My last category is fantasy, and the first book that I'm going to start off with is Serpent and Dove by Shelby and Mahurin. This is one book that I have had since I started reading again at the beginning of this year, and I've never gotten around to because I know it's a series and I know I'm gonna have to tackle the series, and I don't know if I'm ready yet, and it's like, look at the size of that, it's beefy. Again, I don't know a lot about this book because I bought it at the beginning of 2021, but I believe a witch and a witch hunter are kind of thrown together and forced to get married, and it'll be interesting to see how they sort of come to terms with each other. Considering their beliefs are so incredibly different. I know I'm excited to read this book. I don't know what it's about. I know that it's sort of romantic, and we shall see. The next book is one that I have heard everybody talking about for so long. It's one of those books that has been popular for ages. It keeps turning and turning and turning and keeps being brought up, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Again, I bought this at the beginning of this year thinking that I would love it, and then never really got around to reading it. I believe it follows a circus which mysteriously comes to town at nighttime, and it's there for a night and then it disappears, and then there's these two characters in the circus who are competing to sort of be the lead act or get some sort of position within the circus, and they're star-crossed lovers because they're in love, and only one of them can really make it out. The last book in my fantasy category, and the last book that I am determined to read in 2022, is Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. This is one that I received in a book subscription box, so I don't know a lot about it, but I just have to say, like, look at that shiny gold beauty. I think that is amazing, so that's part of what has me determined to read it in 2022. I believe it's about two witches who are very much of opposing beliefs. They are absolute enemies, and they come together, form a sort of unsteady alliance to take down a witch that is sort of gonna destroy their world forever. I'm really excited to learn a bit more about what the story is about, to kind of understand this cover. It's kind of like tribal print sort of thing it reminds me of. I've had a lot of people talk about how amazing this book is, so I'm keen to pick it up in 2022 and hopefully love it as much as everybody else has. So those are the 9 books that I am hoping to read in 2022. There is a good variety there. I think it's part of my sort of New Year's resolution to read more varied books, more varied genres, so I think there's a good variety there of books that I know I'm kind of gonna love, because there's romance and there's fantasy, as well as some sort of crime and law, some non-fiction, and some historical books that I wouldn't usually pick up, but hopefully will love as well. Do let me know if any of these books are on your list for 2022, or if you've read any of these and loved them, not loved them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when I release new content, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!